How's it going, Giant fans? This is Hank and Dictor here, back at you with another short video. And today we are going to be discussing some breaking news. The New York Giants have just fired the offensive coordinator, Jason Garrett, after a horrible 30-10 loss to the defending Super Bowl champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But before we want to get into that, it is time for the plugs as usual. And I'd like to give you guys a friendly neighborhood reminder to where you can follow us. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Big Blue Avenue. And of course, if you like what you see and you want to see more videos like this, or if you want to catch our live streaming when we do our normal show on Thursday nights, you can of course find us at Big Blue Avenue by hitting that big red subscribe button down below. And with that, let's talk about the big news right now. So the Giants have, in Joe Judge's press conference, he basically said the typical thing: we have to do better. But one of the big things he mentioned in that press conference was saying that he felt bad for a lot of players. And if you read between the lines, he was talking about the coaching staff, but he also mentioned the problems with the offense. So when you really look at it and put two and two together, I think Joe Judge pretty much had his breaking point with Jason Garrett. And the more I think about it, I don't really think that Jason Garrett was a coach that he really hired to be part of his staff in the first place. But that's really more of a discussion for another day. This is about his firing in the first place. So he's going to be replaced by Freddie Kitchens. Now, Freddie Kitchens, as many of you probably know, was the Cleveland Browns offensive coordinator in 2018. Baker Mayfield actually got better with him as the coordinator in the second half of that season, for those who might not remember. He was the head coach briefly, but that tenure turned out to be very disastrous. So he came to the Giants when Joe Judge was hired as the head coach as one of the other assistant offensive coordinators. And it should be noted, this actually won't be his first time calling the plays for the Giants as an offensive coordinator. Jason Garrett, you may remember last year, had to miss a game due to testing positive as a result of COVID-19. And it was in this game where when he called the plays, the Giants actually moved around a little bit more and they had a more wide open playbook. However, with that being said, there were also some failed fourth down conversions that probably could have made the difference between a win or loss for the Giants. And not to mention, this was a game that Daniel Jones didn't even start. This is a game that he missed due to injury, and they had Colt McCoy, and the Giants ended up getting clobbered 27-6 to Cleveland. So it didn't really show on the scoreboard, but when you look at the way the offense was, it definitely looked better. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how much better Daniel Jones plays with Kitchens calling the plays instead of Garrett. But now, I think with that having been said, I think it's important that we talk about Jason Garrett. So he was the Giants offensive coordinator for technically 26 games, but he missed one of them, so I'll say 25. And the Giants' record in that span was 9-16. And it should be noted that before he came to the Giants, not only was he their backup quarterback years ago for the 2000 NFC champions, he later became the offensive coordinator of the Cowboys for a couple years. That was really the last time he made the play calls, because then he was made the head coach after they fired Wade Phillips in season, and he was the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys for pretty much the rest of the decade. It was 2019 when they fired him. So, and the fact that he wasn't really calling the plays for the Cowboys as the head coach kind of speaks volumes with how bad the offense was during the time where he was their offensive coordinator. And if you look at the numbers under Jason Garrett, they were 20th in yards per carry, 28th in yards per pass attempt, 28th in yards per play, and 30th in points scored. None of those numbers suggest to me that firing Jason Garrett was the wrong decision. And if you look at the eye test, and if you look at some of the plays that he's called, those haven't been very good either. In fact, they've been very vanilla, not too creative, and predictable. I think the biggest issue that I have with the plays that he calls, I don't really see enough deep passes. I mean, if you look at what Dave Gettleman did during the offseason, and I'm not saying I agree entirely with a lot of Dave Gettleman's decisions, and we'll get to that in tomorrow's live stream for Big Blue Avenue. You have weapons like Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, Kyle Rudolph, who ended up not being able to finish last night's game due to injury. You also have Saquon Barkley. Now, granted, the offensive line hasn't been great, but that's more of a Gettleman problem than a Jason Garrett problem. The fact of the matter is, Daniel Jones hasn't really been allowed to throw the deep ball enough. And when you look at the way the NFL is now, it was a lot different than when he was the head coach and coordinator, or at least when he started becoming a head coach for the Dallas Cowboys in the early 2010s. Now, you need to rely on your quarterback. Because if you don't have a quarterback with a good arm, then you're not going to win games. It's plain and simple. And if you look at the clips of Daniel Jones, he's got the arm to throw a deep pass. I'm not saying this guy is elite or he's perfect or anything. But at the very least, you drafted Daniel Jones pretty early. I would think that with such a high investment, you would want him to be the focal point of your offense. And looking at Jason Garrett's tenure as the offensive coordinator, to me, last night's game was a microcosm of how it all went down. So the Giants were outgained 402 to 215 in terms of yards. They only had 149 yards in passing and 66 in rushing. Not good. And the 215 yards that they gained was the second lowest output of the entire Joe Judge era. And they only gained 15 first downs in this game and had only one third down conversion. Both are season lows. The one play call that bothered me the most with Jason Garrett in last night's debacle, it's 4th and 1. You have Saquon Barkley. Now, ordinarily, I would imagine giving the ball to him. Now, granted, he wasn't really a factor in this loss, but again, we'll get into that more when we talk about the game for tomorrow night's live stream. You have him on 4th and 1, and yet you decide to pass. Why? And if that wasn't bad enough, you didn't even have Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney on the field. Like, I'm sorry, but if you're going to pass on 4th down, at the very least, have your best weapons there. And make no mistake, I'm not against the idea of going for it on 4th down. In fact, there are some times where I say the Giants need to be more aggressive. And if you look at Jason Garrett's tenure as the offensive coordinator, I don't think he was aggressive enough. But the way they executed that 4th down, that wasn't good. And the fact of the matter is, you have more weapons to where you should be able to score more than 30 points, like at least more frequently. You want to know a terrible fact? There has only been one game in the 1.5 years in which Jason Garrett has been the offensive coordinator where the Giants even scored more than 30 points. That was actually a loss to the Dallas Cowboys. But in any event, that really isn't going to cut it. And this has been a pattern with Jason Garrett all season, not letting Daniel Jones throw the ball enough. And now with the Giants at 3-7, and this was a season where they were expected to be a lot better. I think ownership did the right move by giving him his walking papers. Now, back to Freddie Kitchens for a minute. We'll see if this guy is going to be the new offensive coordinator long-term. I don't imagine that's going to be the case. I mean, look, we knew the Giants weren't going to be going outside the organization because it's too late in the season. The Giants were 3-7. You weren't really going to find some random coordinator to really help right the ship this late in the season. And playoffs at this point are probably a long shot the way I see it. But with that having been said, I think having Kitchens be the main offensive coordinator, it's probably an audition, if anything. if the play calling drastically improves, who knows? Maybe he stays on, maybe he's there long term, but I don't imagine that being the case. I think the Giants are probably going to go outside the organization, and we'll see what happens from here. I'm hoping that Daniel Jones's numbers continue to improve. Yes, he didn't have a great game last game, but I'll get more into the defending Daniel Jones part tomorrow night when Tom, Sam, and I are all together and we're talking about the Giants. Fact of the matter is, action needed to be taken. Jason Garrett's gone, but unfortunately, this move was probably a week or two too late. But it is what it is. But with all that having been said, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to tune in and watch this short video. Don't forget to follow us on our social medias. Remember, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Big Blue Avenue. And if you like what you see, you want to see more of these short videos, if you want to see the replays of all our live streams, and of course, if you want to comment, please do not hesitate to hit that big red button down below and give us a subscribe. And in addition, remember, we are also a sub-show of Review and Preview Sports. You can also find us, you can find that on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Review and Preview Sports. And of course, you can also give them a subscribe as well. Once again, thank you guys again for tuning into this video. I look forward to talking to you guys all tomorrow for a special early Wednesday night edition of Big Blue Avenue. Back at it again with Tom and Sam, where we will be recapping last night's game against the Buccaneers, and we will be previewing the upcoming game against the Philadelphia Eagles with our special guest, Sporty Jordy. But until next time, thank you again, Giant fans, for tuning in, and I will see you guys later.